Hello, welcome, ladies and gentlemen, whoever's watching. This is Rahul Kolle, and on the other side is
Hi, I'm Priyanka Bharadwaj. I run Marriage Broker Auntie, which helps people get married. Yeah, that's what I do.
we're getting together today to have an interesting chat about a lot of things. I'll tell you a little bit about what I do. I'm a public speaking and presentation trainer, so communication's my bread and butter sort of thing. And we're
Mm-hmm.
having a brief chat to see where our fields meet and ask questions that haven't been asked before. So, first of all, Priyanka, every story begins with a conflict, and without a conflict, there's literally no story. Like Romeo and Juliet, it's because the families weren't agreeing. And the movie Ram Leela that Sanjay Leela Bhansali directed was also because families weren't agreeing. There's always a conflict, which is why the story arises. What conflict are you trying to resolve in the marriage market?
I think what I'm trying to do is I'm trying to empower more people to take this step on their own, make this decision of who they want to spend the rest of their lives with on their own. I'm supporting people in making probably one of the first decisions like that they make in their lives, because as you know, I think Indian parents, as sort of as concerned and interested that they are in our upbringing, I think a lot of times a lot of parents don't really want to watch us fall. So they're always holding our hand, they're always leading the way. And so when it comes to getting married, I think of late what we're seeing is parents are trying to take a step back because they realize that they understand people, their children, lesser and lesser today, given how fast our world is changing. And so suddenly you find that these people are on their own having to make this decision. They don't know when to make it. They don't know how to make it. They don't know if they should make it at all. So what I'm trying to do is I am helping people make this decision.
Not knowing which decision to take is it a problem that we're seeing more of today, or has it been the case since forever?
I think we had an infrastructure that supported us in making this decision much more easily. Like, for example, like where your parents would pick out like 4, 5 prospects through known circles, etc., and you would get to choose out of like 4 or 5, prospects maybe. But today the choice is infinite, right? Like it makes you feel like you could go on forever, and somehow, in a weird sort of way, it helps sell the soulmate scam better.
You call it a
And so people
soulmate
just,
scam?
yeah, because I mean, what's a soulmate? Like it's this belief that there is one person who can possibly satisfy every need of yours and is going to complete you in every possible way. I mean,
Yeah.
is that possible?
I mean,
I mean, I don't know if it's the cynical bitch in me that's talking, but I somehow I don't believe it.
no, it's a fair point you make because recently I was watching this stand-up special where most 23-year-olds tend to get their information from stand-up specials and woke
Right,
comedians, right? So there's this
right.
person I was watching by the name Daniel Sloss. He's a Scottish comedian, and he put out a
Mm-hmm.
video called, a Netflix special called Jigsaw. And the name quite intrigued
Okay.
me, and it was a puzzle sort of and even the teaser that he put out wasn't very descriptive. So it lured me
Right.
into watching the video, and he threw away such a gem, and that's got me thinking. He says that every aspect of your life is like a jigsaw puzzle. Like your family is one piece of the jigsaw, your job is one piece of the jigsaw, and then your friends, your social life, your money making strategies, tactics, your beliefs, and the centerpiece we've been told is the partner piece, without which you're left incomplete. And this is
Right.
the story that every kid has grown up with, looking at their parents, and their parents say, you need to find the perfect soulmate. And don't worry, we'll help you find it. We'll help you find that partner piece. Which is why a lot of us end up feeling incomplete. Do you think this is the reason that our decision making takes such a big hit? Because we think it's a make it or break it piece.
So I mean, I don't know about the rest of the world, okay? I could probably only speak for Indians. I think
Mm-hmm.
what makes it so difficult for us to take this decision is because we're not used to making decisions. We don't have the courage to make decisions. We're afraid of failing, right? Every time that we've tried to do something that was important, it was made very clear to us that it had to be done well. It had to
Right.
be done perfectly, right? So when you add that kind of pressure, especially when you don't really know how to do things, it is daunting. It is super daunting, and I think that's why people struggle to find a partner. Having said that, there are a lot of other reasons, right? Like you might know who you love, or like you might be in love with somebody and it's not a big decision for you to spend the rest of your life with them, but the other person also has to like you back, right?
Correct.
So
Correct.
it's a bunch of different things. It's fear of decision making, fear of rejection, fear of failure, like a lot of these things that kind of prevent us from sort of ending up with somebody. Or I mean, like I don't even know if that's the answer, right? I don't even know if people should get married. I'm not someone who goes and tells people that they should get married, although I run marriage broker, Auntie. I don't
Mm-hmm.
tell people to get married. I just say, if you want to get married, I'm here with you, but I don't endorse the institution, or you know.
But for the folks who flock to you in such large numbers, what's their biggest pain point? Is it the lack of options? Is it the fact that they can't decide what they want, or is it just that they don't know themselves yet? What's the biggest pain point?
It's everything. It's all of these, and I don't think I can say it's one more than the other.
Uh-huh.
At least so far, amongst the people that I work with, which I would say is close to 1,000 people.
Mm-hmm.
It's been a combination of all these things. I don't know if it's one more than the other.
So how do they resolve things one by one? But it's because first it's got to be
So
inward, right? First you got to know what
yeah,
you want, and then you can go
yeah,
out and look. So how
yeah,
do you let
yeah.
them resolve that inner dilemma?
Yeah, one of the things that I do is I kind of like take them on a journey back from where they started,
Right.
like right from time that they were kids, and what life was like at home, and how did that influence their choices, let's say in school and college and so on. And it helps them revisit, um, like why they're even struggling to make this decision, or what are they sort of battling that is holding them back from actually ending up with somebody, right? Like in certain cases, let's say when people come from conservative
Mm-hmm.
households,
Mm-hmm.
um, they're very afraid of screwing up,
Yeah.
uh, and they're also very afraid of doing things their way, because they're very worried about upsetting their parents or something like that. um, like they have to break free from those shackles before they make this decision. And one of the things that I always wonder is, I see this clear divide of people where, I mean, all of us come from very conservative like households in some sense, right? But there's a very clear divide of people who don't cross the line because they're too afraid. People who do cross the line and see what's on the other side.
Mm-hmm.
And the ones who've crossed the line and seen what's on the other side are somehow a little bit more capable of making this decision on their own.
Right. Right. Okay. But
And
you interestingly you
yeah,
call these shackles. You said that we got to break free from our um, the known areas and go into the unknown sort of to make a decision. But these shackles, so to say, are the same things that make you feel like you. When you break away, you're sort of breaking away from a particular belief and identity. Um, is there at any point a crisis where if I try the unknown, my biggest backing, my family, is going to disown me? I think that's a big fear for a lot of youngsters, and which is why they're scared to go into the unknown.
yeah, yeah. So it's interesting that you say that, it's the shackles that makes us who we are. I think that's what we tend to think, because we're so afraid to explore what we are on the fringes of those shackles, which could very well be, if given the space to sort of expand, would potentially grow into something much larger than the shackles itself, right? For example, like I do this exercise with a lot of people who are struggling with this particular issue where I make them sort of make a list of everything about their personality. They just, use 20 adjectives or something to describe themselves. And then I say, why don't you actually, against each adjective, write who identifies with this the most? You,
Okay.
your family, your friends, or your co-workers, etc., about you. Right? And then they start writing that. And then I make them sort of put it into sort of concentric circles where at the center is adjectives that you use to describe yourself and you identify with the most, right? So that's the innermost that needs to be protected the most. Then comes your family and friends and so on. And once you kind of visualize that, you sort of start to understand what makes you you and what should drive this decision of what your life should be like going forward and what sort of partner should come in. And then it becomes easier. I won't say it solves all your problems and you break free from the shackles, but at least just having that visualization or awareness, I feel like it helps you move a step closer to sort of making this decision.
These concentric circles that you talk about, they're very interesting, but are these lines that well demarcated? Sometimes there are qualities that you're confused about. Are these me, or are these my surroundings making me feel like me? So how do you draw that line between your core values and the families that have been the values that have been passed on to you by your family?
So the ones that you're very clear about will stay in the circle. The ones that you're not so clear about will stay on the boundaries.
On the boundaries, okay.
And then over time, you sort of pull them on whichever side that makes sense, right?
So it's a continuous exercise.
Yeah, it's a continuous exercise. You literally just pull it up on your desk and you see it every day. And you just score something out or move something to some place. And you just keep working on it till you feel like you're looking at it and that picture tells you a story of who you are.
Right.
I think most of us just really afraid to do that exercise because it makes us realize how often we actually think about the circle in the center because we don't think about ourselves or what we truly are, because it scares us to know that maybe there is nothing. Maybe we didn't pursue it.
I saw this interesting tweet recently where someone said, everything that you know about yourself, everything that you feel you are, they're all borrowed values.
Right.
And I think
which is fair, right?
A part of that really hit me, and I thought, here I am bragging about everything that I am, but none of it is actually mine. These are things that I've picked up from people around me.
Yeah, but what's interesting is some resonate with you much more than the others. So those can be resonating because there's something inside of you that resonates with that value, right?
Right. They can also be conditioned with time. Don't you think so? Like, for example, say a kid leaves home for the first time and goes and stays in a hostel. A lot of things are new to him and things that his body naturally does not imbibe because, these are contrary to all the things he's learned through his childhood. But with time, after spending a lot of time with, say, a peer group or people whom you look up to, you slowly do start imbibing them, and the values that were contrary to your belief once upon a time now become your own. So there's a conflict when you head back. So how much of a role does time have to play?
Rather than time, I would say, just experiences and openness to new experiences allows for change, right? Having said that, not everybody who goes to a hostel or lives away from home experiences what you're saying. There are a lot of people who resist this change and can resist it for the entire duration of it.
Let's talk about this from a relationship point of view. I had a couple of friends. We all were part of the same friend circle, and these two people were poles apart in their beliefs, in their habits, in their traits, everything, right? And never got along for the longest time, ended up
Mm-hmm.
together. I don't know what happened, how the cosmic forces or whatever changed, and they got together and they became inseparable after a point. Here are two people who believe uh, not in the same things, who believe in opposite things, but can live together.
Mm-hmm.
So, in such a scenario, uh, how do you say that the other person resonated with you? How do you start accepting this completely strange person, strange beliefs, and make it your own?
I think acceptance isn't necessarily always a function of sharing values with somebody.
Mm-hmm.
It's also having a sort of openness in terms of saying, the world doesn't have to be exactly like me,
Right.
and I am also capable of appreciating something that's different. I may not do it myself, I may not think that way, but I'm okay and I'm open to this difference of opinion. But having said that, they probably shared something between the two of them
Uh-huh.
that was interesting enough for them to get together.
Right.
And when I say shared, it's not um, it's almost like a different person. It's a combination of these two people resulting in something unique that
Yeah.
only two people share, right?
Correct.
um, it doesn't have to be because both of them love reading, or like, one person loves reading, one person loves watching TV,
Mm.
and maybe they like spending time apart. I don't know, I'm just saying it doesn't have to be the same thing.
Right. Right.
It's what they share, and if what they share is interesting enough, then there is a possibility of a relationship, right?
Uh, I, there's a surprising twist that I want to add to this conversation on a slightly different
Mm-hmm.
tone. Here we are talking about traits and character and values and beliefs, but you for a fact know that the people who come to you with this problem of finding someone for themselves talk about how tall they must be, how
Yeah.
built they must be if it's a guy, or how
Yeah.
pretty she must be if she's a girl. So
Sure.
how big a role do that play, and is it a more predominant role than say values and beliefs?
I think some people like to acknowledge this and some people don't, right? Like
Right.
some people openly tell me, hey, I want a tall guy because tall guys make me secure,
Hmm.
right? Um, and some people say, oh, you know what, like I'm not so shallow, I don't really care about looks. But then they go on rejecting everybody who doesn't, look that great, right?
Correct. Correct.
Um, it's only when I tell them, hey, about all the visual cues that you use to
Hmm.
like when you look at someone and you find them attractive,
Right.
and then we'll get into like the deeper emotional sort of rational things.
Right.
And that's when they feel a little less shy to tell me, oh yeah, actually I like really bright eyes. And then I say, listen, this is what your brain is saying after some
Mhm.
thought, that you want to be with someone who's emotionally stable. But immediately, instinctively, without thought, you're saying, oh, I want someone who's tall.
Mm.
It's okay to want both.
Right.
Doesn't make you lesser of a person because you want a tall man. And when I say that, there's suddenly like, oh, okay, then I want a tall guy, and I'm not apologetic about it. But then
Yeah.
I say, hey, this is you, right? You've got to accept all sides of you. You've got to accept what your brain is thinking rationally over time. You also got to accept what you're instinctively reacting to, and it's okay, and to say it's okay. But then you've got to know which one to prioritize at some point of time.
Right. Right. This this also reminds me of an incident. Right? I had a good friend of mine. I'm not going to name her. I'm going to take any names, but she was hell bent on finding a very emotionally stable person, and like you said, she didn't seem like the shallow kind who would go purely on looks. She wanted somebody
Right.
whom she could count on, whom she could share her deepest, darkest secrets with, and all those. And cut to exactly 6 months later, she found the person who was exactly opposite to everything she had said. He was an emotional wreck, um, did not know what he wanted, was clueless, but was very good looking. I'll give him that. So, how does one person compromise all of their beliefs and end up with something exactly contrary to what they were looking for. It's happened several
Okay,
times.
yeah, I'll give you an analogy for that, right?
Right,
We were talking earlier about how um, you don't want to wake up in the morning and look at your phone, right?
right,
Ideally, you'd want to wake up in the morning and have this beautiful sort of healthy routine, not have to go to your phone. But you still wake up in the morning and look at your phone. Why do you do it? Because you're falling prey to that short-term gratification that picking up the phone in the morning and looking at it gives you. You don't think long term that time.
uh-huh, right.
Sometimes you just don't think long term and you just want a short term gratification. Someone looks great and they happen to like you back as well. Like, great, why not? Why would you pass off that opportunity? Like, in your mind, you'll still be thinking, oh my God, I really wish this person was emotionally sound. But then that doesn't stop you from like picking up the phone every morning, if you know what I mean.
There's also this well-known behavior that's I think it's extensively documented in movies, and I'm not referring to Bollywood but just movies in general,
Right.
where a person tends to be attracted to someone who's emotionally, say, I don't want to use, for the lack of a better word, broken, right? You want
Yeah.
to go and fix this person and be with them, and there's some quality to an emotionally broken person that you're attracted to, and I don't get it. Never felt that way, but I know people who talk about it all the time. So maybe you could disillusion this concept for me.
Yeah, I don't know if you've heard of this concept called the drama triangle, which basically says, we all sort of fall into one of three sort of categories where um, you either pretend to be you start being the victim,
Hmm.
or you start trying to be the protector,
Hmm.
or you any sort of argument, or you end up being the persecutor, right? Um, in any sort of interaction or argument or situation, you will see that you will fall into one of these three sort of categories, right?
Hmm.
Some people are just more likely to act as protectors. When they see somebody that's broken, they feel like they can go fix it. And fixing it gives them some sort of gratification or some sort of satisfaction, makes them feel better about themselves. And I think those are the type of people who get portrayed in this character that you're talking about, right? But not everybody is like that. There are a lot of people who feel that way because it gives them a sense of control, and in we all like that sense of control, right? Like, it makes us feel safe, it makes us feel secure
Yeah.
when we get that sense of control, and we get that sense of control through fixing something.
Yes. Yeah. But is it like
Yeah,
an innate ability, innate quality, and you can possess just one, or can you be multiple of these things?
you
Can you
can
be
be
a
multiple of these things. Depending on different situations, you can be multiple of these things. You could just be more likely to fall into one over the others most of the time, but this is not something so innate that you can't change it.
right?
If you become aware of it, you become conscious of it, this is something that you can practice to sort of change, right? It's like
Hmm.
you being a right-handed person and then learning to write with your left hand.
But some people realize very quickly that this,
Yeah,
say the fixer, right? You said the protector. This instinct to try and fix
yeah,
someone or protect someone from feeling a certain emotion or cheering them up. I see this a lot. Can I cheer you up? No, just leave me alone, is what other people say. Give me the space. No, but there are these protectors who
yeah,
want to come and
yeah,
cheer you up, fix your day. Somewhere down the
yeah,
line, very quickly they realize that this is a toxic habit, and they something they can't get rid of. They keep doing
yeah,
this again and again, for
yeah,
that instant gratification, that instant feel good factor, and realize
yeah,
that the person, after being fixed, just gets up and walks away, and you're
yeah,
left hung out to dry. So how
yeah.
does someone break out of this habit and realize that it's doing them more harm than good?
I think anything, just as anything else, it starts with awareness, right? If you become aware that you are stuck in this cycle,
Hmm.
then you can fix something about yourself. In fact, I actually had a client who was sort of falling into this trap where he constantly felt like any and every relationship that he was in, he had to be the protector.
Right.
And he would try and fix things to make sure that it would work, and he would feel good and so on. But he realized that it wasn't working for him. Once we sort of discussed, and he sort of became aware of this pattern in himself, I think he's a little bit more sort of I would say in a way guarded or cautious when he feels the need to sort of go fix something now.
Right.
But yeah, that's the first step, and that's like 50% of making progress.
Okay. Let me give you a situation now where you introduced two people and they're going on their, say, first date of sorts. They're trying to get to know each other. They're going out and meeting each other. So how do you stop your natural instincts from taking over you and getting the better of you? Instincts that haven't served you well in the past. But at the same time, you want to seem like yourself and not somebody else. Not pretend to be somebody else.
Yeah. So I would do this even before the date, right? Like, so what I normally do is, like, when I introduce two people, I know what their sort of strengths and weaknesses are at a very sort of broad, basic level. So I make sure I put people in situations where they're on par with each other, and no one sort of has the upper hand over the other, or like no one's feeling underconfident or feeling awkward about meeting this person. Let's say when you go out on a date with somebody, if you can make sure that if you're feeling underconfident, if you can make sure that you're meeting this person in a setting that makes you supremely confident and allows you to be yourself, then there's nothing like it, right? And there's something that you said, where you said, how do you prevent yourself from your natural sort of instincts taking over? I don't think this is something you should be afraid of on the first date. And I think part of being with someone is that they should also get to know what your sort of natural instincts are.
Right.
And they have to be okay with that, because no matter how hard you try, you could or could not possibly change something about yourself, and they've got to be okay with it, right?
Yeah.
So going on a date with somebody, especially a first date, and pretending to be someone else is like the worst idea ever. So you should just be yourself. But if you feel like you're, going to be in an awkward situation, I don't know, go to a place that makes you feel good.
There's
some people like hiking, and hiking makes them feel good.
Hiking for a date, that's unheard of, isn't it?
No, I know people who've gone on hiking dates. Yeah.
So there's a friend of mine from college. We're still in touch, and he used to go on he was looking for the right person, so to say. Only 22 back at the time, and I know it sounds naive to look for a person, but yeah, he went on quite a few dates, and some didn't work out for him. And very self-aware person, right? He's got that going for him. Self-awareness, absolutely on point. He knows he's narcissistic and ends up talking about himself all the time. And when his dates don't work out, he comes and tells all of his lads and says, "No, it didn't work out. I'm not seeing her again." And when we said, "Why didn't it work out?" He says, "No, I think I put her off by just talking about myself." And then we said, "Don't you think it's a good idea to not do that?" He says, "But I had a great time." So right. How do you fix that? You're having a great time, but at the same time, the same quality where you're having a lot of fun can be off-putting for others.
Okay, let me ask you this question actually. So when you go on a date and you come back, what is an ideal scenario for you after the end of the date?
For me personally, I would want to be intrigued and want to discover more. Getting to know the person is the exciting part, right? So I want to have more left of that conversation that I can take up the next time. So
right. So you want to basically go on another date. You want to basically go on another date, right?
For sure.
And you would like to have a say in terms of whether you can go on another date.
Of course, yeah.
Ideally, you don't want to come back and the other person texts you saying, "Yeah, it was nice meeting you. Have a nice life," right?
Yeah.
So I always tell people, if you want to have the power in the relationship of deciding whether you meet this person again or not,
Mm-hmm.
you need to know more about the person than they learn about you.
Right.
Because then you know whether you want to go meet them again or not, while they're still not sure.
Wow, this feels like a game of chess all of a sudden.
So, so if you learn more about them,
Uh-huh.
then you can sit back and decide, hey, was this interesting for me? Do I really want to go back out with this person again, or do I want to give it a pass? You
Okay.
would like to hold the power of deciding whether you want to go meet this person or not.
Okay.
So what does this mean? You always have to learn more about the person than you tell them about yourself. I'm not saying, like, when they ask you a question, be like, oh, I'm not telling you about myself. I'm just saying, be interested, be curious, learn about
Right.
the other person
Right.
so that you can then decide whether you want to go back out again.
Mm-hmm.
Right? So when I say this, suddenly people are like, oh shit, yeah,
I've been doing it
you
wrong all
know,
along, right?
yeah,
That's what they give you.
yeah.
Yeah.
And also, like, totally avoid like generic, random, pointless conversation for 2 to 3 dates at a stretch, right? Like, some people
Mm.
just go, they'll keep talking about random sort of, non-personal topics for 3-4 dates. I mean, if it's fun, great. If you're having a fabulous time, fantastic. But if you're wasting your time and the other person is also wasting their time, and they could be talking to anybody, like, apart from you, having the exact same conversation, then there's no point.
Right.
You've got to bring a little bit of yourself into the conversation, and you've got to bring a little bit of them into the conversation.
Right. Right. I mean, I think there's a workshop that I did recently on branding, and it was
Mm-hmm.
a personal branding workshop that I did where I taught engineering graduates how to make a swanky LinkedIn profile, how to market what you're good at, and as Indians, we're afraid of bragging about ourselves. We tend to be more submissive, so that's wrong. But even when it comes to dates, right, there's a certain image that you want to give off. There's a certain picture that you want to portray, and everybody's carrying this
Mm-hmm.
picture. So there's a
Yeah.
recent incident where I have this very positive outlook on life kind of person. All the time,
Mm-hmm.
positivity quotes on Instagram every morning on his story. You got this. If you're
Mm-hmm.
looking at this, you're going to be successful one day. Stuff like that. So very
Right.
positive,
Right.
and he's a great
Right.
person to be around because he makes you feel warm and welcome all the time. And
Sure.
he met this one person who was just like him, and he was so excited about it. I think they went on 3 dates, and 3 dates is a lot of dates. If you're I
Right.
don't know, according to me, 3 dates is a lot of dates.
Yeah, 3 days is a lot. Yeah.
Yeah, so at the end of
Yeah.
the 3 dates, we were also very excited. We wanted to get to know how it was going. Said, so how's it going, man? And he said, uh, she's a little too positive for me, dude. I'm not able to have a real conversation with her.
Okay.
So, so it was, how do you portray a particular image at the same time get to know the person and be able to detach yourself from that image and talk about other things? Like, for example, if I'm a very positive outlook on life sort of a guy, I also want to be able to talk about the things that are going wrong. I also want to be able to rant. I also want to be able to crib and ask for attention. But if you've portrayed a particular image for
Yeah.
a long enough period of time, you hesitate from doing the other things because all of a sudden you're breaking character.
Yeah. I mean, this is interesting because I do get that, people want to portray a certain image, and they you sort of want to be guarded, etc. But I think if you hang out for long enough, I think you get bored of trying to portray an image.
Right.
I think at some point it breaks down.
Right.
Like, I feel like, let's say 1.5 hours into a conversation, I think you lose it. Like, you lose the energy to keep up with the act, right?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
If it is an act.
Right.
So, yeah, I mean, like, if you spend enough time with somebody, I feel like you can open up. But then if you feel like you're not able to break that person, you just have to give up. Sometimes you also have to know when to move on. Like, just give up and move on. Like, you're not able to break this person, just give up and move on. But what I find very interesting is to ask people a lot of uncomfortable questions on a first date. just so that you can break them a little bit more easily, so that you can have more real conversations. I don't know, I saw this series on YouTube where um, they have like 36 questions that they ask each other on like a sort of blind date or whatever, which is meant to bring them a lot closer.
Mm-hmm.
I'm a big believer that, you know, you should actually spend time asking serious questions to each other about like random things
Yeah.
that can really help you get to know somebody.
Right.
So this whole, like, I'm not a big fan of people meeting in a cafe and like, or like, you know, for a drink or like this sort of
No.
serious setting.
Uh-huh.
Big fan of people needing for walks somewhere in a busy area where they don't have the pressure of looking into each other's eyes or making up an act of how they need to behave. When you're constantly like walking, you're distracted by random things, you keep talking about random things. It's very free flow and it's very natural. um, so I found that it works really well, not just for my clients, but it's worked great for me. I think I ended up marrying the guy I did this with.
Right.
I find that a lot more sort of natural.
This is personally
And
very unheard of for me, because even earlier when you said go for a hike, I was like, what? Go for a hike? A date on a hike? That's just not heard of, for me personally, and for people my age, I think. Or when you grow older, I think you give up these illusions of
no,
what
this
a
is
date
actually
must look
the
like.
story of no, this is actually the story of I think a 24 or 25-year-old. So it's not
Really?
not
Wow.
that old.
Okay.
And oh, my walking date happened when I was 22. Uh,
Wow.
so it's like
This is a revelation for me.
in the past, like before I
Uh-huh.
went on this walking date, of course I met guys at a restaurant or in a cafe or in a bar, and like, you know,
Mhm.
that's interesting too. But then I feel like it allows for freer conversation when you're just walking in a busy sort of area,
Mhm.
distracted by so many things.
Because it gives you more things to talk
You
about.
should
Like,
try it
yeah,
actually.
yeah. I'm definitely gonna use this. It's my nugget. It's my takeaway
Yeah, and it
from this
also,
conversation. Yeah.
yeah, I feel like it also takes the pressure of like having to come up with interesting things to talk about all the time. Not that I think you have that problem, but you know, I'm just saying
Yeah.
some people could, right? Um,
Let's talk about that, in fact, because a lot of people end up going to cafes and restaurants on dates, and
yeah,
you're sitting bang opposite each other and zeroed in on each other's faces, that you got
yeah,
to think up topics on the spot, right?
yeah,
And personally, I don't think I have a problem making conversation with people. I can talk to a wall, but I know a lot of people who hesitate and who cannot spontaneously come up with topics. So communication is a big uh, sort of a hurdle for a lot of people, because I know people who are very good at communicating, who are very articulate, who can explain a complex idea in the simplest of words, but they do that with people they're comfortable talking to. So
yeah.
here you are on a date with with a person whom you know very little about. How do you instantly get comfortable and make sure that the communication that's going on doesn't break?
This is how it works, right? Like you'll have that first moment of silence and you'll be like, okay, no, you know, let's keep going. I'll come up with something like really
Mm,
quickly. Okay,
mm,
fine. You know, let this person come up with it this time, and next time I'll come up with something to fill the awkward silence. And after a while, you're like, oh shit. Okay, do you think he's going to like want to walk out on me, or like, you know, say that, okay, you know, it's time to go, and like he's going to leave? Should I
yeah.
say it first? Like, so there's this
The
constant
power
sort of,
struggle comes into the picture. Yeah.
yeah, exactly. So you have the sidetrack running in your head, and you
Yeah.
like, you're completely over this person that you're meeting already, because you're thinking, okay, how do I walk out of this feeling absolutely powerful and not
Yeah.
having been stood up, or like, you know, where this
Yeah.
guy just says, okay, you know, I'm done, I'm, you know, we'll, like, I gotta go, or like, you know, I'm running late. You want to be the first person who says that, and like, you've completely lost the plot. It's not about
Yeah.
getting to know the other person anymore. um, and
Yeah.
and so because of that, I say just meet outside, like somewhere
Correct.
where you can be distracted, where there's no pressure,
Mm.
and it's easier.
I say this a lot, that communication in general when it comes to abstract communication, where you don't really have an agenda, you're trying to find your way as you go along the conversation. It's like balancing a sort of a sword on a needle sort of thing. It's a very fine line you got to tread. Otherwise, you end up overdoing or underdoing something. And I sort of have found this fine line when I'm having conversations, abstract conversations. There are two sides to this. There's one who find it awkward to talk, who find it awkward to open up. And I also know good friends of mine who talk a lot on dates, who even the smallest 1 second silence is too unbearable for them, and they'll introduce something, they'll throw in a new dish into the conversation, and the conversation just meanders away and becomes uninteresting. So what do you
Yeah.
have to say to such people who are extroverts by nature and who try to overcompensate for silence and awkwardness?
I think being able to take an awkward pause, sit down and actually watch that pause from the outside, from a
Mm-hmm.
distance, is
Mm-hmm.
a little bit like Zen, right? Uh, I feel like it takes immense amount of power or
Mm-hmm.
like coolness to be able to do that. Like you just sit and watch that like awkward piece of silence going everywhere, wriggling, struggling. You want to hold it, you want to soothe it, but you just
At the
sit there
same
and
time,
watch.
not come across as a person who's staring at the other one and seem creepy.
No, that's still okay. I think that's still okay.
Okay.
I still prefer to seem creepy rather than desperate.
Okay.
So,
Yeah.
so
Makes sense.
yeah, I think yeah, it's like Zen. If you can get there, there's nothing like it, right? It's similar to how very weird and like very weird analogy now that I think of it, right? Actually, I have two different analogies for this, right?
Mm-hmm.
One is you know how when someone's like dating somebody and their heart gets broken and like they're a complete like ball of mess and like they just don't know what to do with themselves, and suddenly after a few different relationships or experiences they realize that they can handle rejection better,
Mm-hmm.
either by like pretending to be in denial or like brushing that feeling away. But
Mm-hmm.
like there's this zen moment that you feel that when somebody hurts you, you don't feel anything, or when you hurt somebody you don't feel anything. You suddenly feel like you've arrived in life having gone through pain so many times.
Mm-hmm.
It's kind of like that. And it's also on the other hand, it's like marriage in some sense, where growing comfortable with awkward silences, growing comfortable with not having shared interests, growing
Mm-hmm.
comfortable with how sort of vanilla life becomes after a while.
Mm-hmm.
So it's like you need to get to that state of zen, where you're comfortable with how things are, and saying that when you don't have that ideal sort of template in your head and everything needs to fit into that, I think it becomes easier. I think I don't know if that made any sense at all,
I
but
mean,
then
there were bits of that were real strong takeaways, and the concept of Zen is not very common amongst us younger folk. And the concept of, like you said, the power struggle, right? Walking away
right.
as powerful as I could possibly be from a conversation is what people keep above everything else, and you keep looking at that so often that you're blinded by just this, and you forget to look at the other aspects, the subtle nuances, like
Yeah.
taking a pause and looking at things in a detached manner and just trying to understand the other person and being empathetic. Empathy is, I think, is lost
Yeah.
amongst us today,
Why do you say that?
because at least with people in my friend circle, and I'm saying people in my friend circle, it's quite a broad friend circle, so I could use this template and apply it everywhere else, and I'm sure it'll fit in. um,
Mm-hmm.
it's all about power struggle. It's all about who walked out on whom, who's more powerful, who had the last say, who's cooler, who has the upper hand, who settled and who reached out. The concept of who settled and who reached out is so predominant that it's plagued the dating life of many of my friends. And
I think I know what you mean, because I remember somebody 21-year-old who told me this. She's like, I don't get the etiquettes of the dating world today, because it's like when somebody texts you, you're supposed to not respond to them for a day and then be
Yeah.
like, oh my god, I didn't have time to like look at your text. Like, oh,
This
what
is
were you busy doing?
absurd.
Like,
Yeah, this is
yeah,
absurd.
like nothing, but I'm supposed to do this just to seem cool. And I'm like,
Yeah,
that is ridiculous. Like,
exactly. So you know what I mean. You know what the
yeah,
opinions
yeah.
are.
I don't think anything's changed. It was kind of similar, like even 10 years ago.
Was
Like,
it?
I don't think it was very different. Like, it was a, it was a lot about who asked whom out, who dumped whom, and like, it was all about that.
But it's a lot
In
more
fact,
instant today. It's so instant that sometimes it's difficult to process what's going on because it's happening at such a breakneck pace.
give me an example. Give me another example.
Like if you say swipe right on Tinder and match with somebody and you go on a date and it's just one date and you exchange numbers and now you're talking extensively and suddenly one day you stop talking, but you see the person has seen all your messages and then the conversations aren't taking place. So you're suddenly crippled by this immense sense of, oh my god, I put myself out there and here I am hung out to dry. Before you didn't
Yeah,
know that. You didn't know if someone's seen your messages. You didn't know if someone is busy. Now you do.
yeah,
So the breakneck pace
yeah.
at
It was
which,
easier to assume they died or something.
yes, yes, yes. And assumptions make up our world, right?
Yeah.
Assumptions make us powerful. Now you can't even assume.
Sometimes, sometimes I keep thinking, like, people from the past, like
Yeah.
friends who I've drifted away from, or ex-boyfriends who I'm no longer with. I
Hmm.
keep wondering why none of them reach out.
Right.
Like, they can. There's
I know.
technology. Then they know me. I am still using the same number that I had like 20 years ago or something.
Right.
Like, why won't they reach out, right? It hurts, it's painful that they won't reach out, but you're like thinking of them, and it somehow
Mm.
makes you feel sick because you're thinking of them and they're not thinking of you.
Yeah.
But you can still sit down and assume that maybe they died, or like, just, just
This
something
is
to make you feel better.
a
And
radical way
then,
of looking at things.
actually, luckily for me, a lot of my ex-boyfriends are not on social media, so it's very
Okay.
easy for me to assume that they died.
Okay.
um, because it's not like you'll see something on Instagram and be like, oh, like, can't believe that guy, like, is doing this, or like something like that, right? But I get you. Yeah, it's hard. It's much harder
It's
today.
obviously harder today.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah.
And
The blue ticks.
exactly, which is why I have blue ticks. Not that I succumb to
No,
these.
which is why you've disabled it. Which is
Yes,
why you've disabled it. Not
correct.
because you don't want the other person to see that you've seen it, because you don't want to know if they've seen it or
That's
not,
right.
because somehow that makes you feel, oh,
For
it's
me, for
sick.
me, it's
But
more of not not power struggle with women. It's more of power struggle with event organizers. Because
with
here I am,
anybody, right? Like,
yeah, here I
yeah,
am sending proposals to the next event. They've asked for a quotation. I've sent in my quotation. They've seen it and reply, dude. I'm waiting for a reply. Yeah,
yeah,
it's more
yeah.
of that.
I know.
Let's take a small segue into a more mature world and more mature argument of arranged and love marriage, right?
Okay.
So, why is the uncool phrase tagged to arranged marriages? Why is it perceived as uncool among the younger generation?
I think it's perceived as uncool because parents are a bit more involved in it,
Okay.
and anywhere where the previous generation is involved and parents are involved, even when you're grown up as an adult,
Mm-hmm.
is considered uncool.
Right.
Um, it's like you could look at somebody and be like, oh, that person's such a baby that he needs his parents to find him someone. Even now he's like 35, or like,
Mm, yeah.
I think that's why it's uncool. But like, if you think about how people go about love marriages today, it's pretty much the same as arranged marriage, except instead of an auntie, it was an app or something. So
Right.
I remember I met somebody who I asked him, do you have a love marriage or arranged marriage? And the person was like, love. I was like, oh, okay. Where did you meet your wife? And he's like, Bharat matrimony. I'm like, oh, what do you mean love? I was like, oh, no. We dated for 6 months, like before we decided to get
That
married.
doesn't
I was
count.
like, yeah, that doesn't count at all. But there's this whole obsession.
Yeah.
Like people want a love marriage. They want to go tell everybody they had a love marriage because somehow makes them feel like an adult and I'm cool. Like I can tap a chick and like get her.
There's an interesting argument that a comedian by the name Saurabh Pant put out. So I was hosting a show for him in Bangalore. He is performing in Kormangla, and in his set he said this thing where his worst kind of audience is the people who say, I got into an arranged love marriage. Like, what is arranged love? It sounds so wrong.
Yeah, I'm a little guilty of that myself, okay?
Okay.
No, actually, no, I don't call mine arranged love. I call it love arranged. Like, okay, whatever, doesn't matter.
Makes sense. So, yeah, I get what you mean.
So my story is, I found my own partner.
Mm-hmm.
My parents didn't find him for me, but then I wasn't in love with him.
Mm-hmm.
I just thought he makes for a good husband, and then we decided to get married. So it's like neither love nor arranged. Like, where do you put this, right?
So how did you meet him? You make me curious. How did you meet him?
We met on the internet. So I used to follow his blogs, and then we got chatting through Orkut.
Right.
But we weren't in love with each other or anything. We just happened to meet one day after 2 years of talking to each other, and then when we met, we were like, hey, actually, you make for a good partner. So like, why not, right? So there was no love, but it wasn't arranged in the true sense where parents are involved. So yeah, I don't really know what to call it. I think we called it one of them, like arranged love or love arranged. But then, yeah, I get it, right?
I for a fact know that your husband's very smart because I've had a chance of meeting him, and I think he was a speaker at one of the events that I was hosting. And correct me if I'm wrong, he did his schooling from MPS and then went to IIT and then did his MBA from IMA. IMB, okay, right. So, do you know how I remember this? Do you know, it's very strange how I remember this, okay? I was introducing all this.
He probably has it on his Twitter bio or something like that.
No, I don't follow him on Twitter, in fact. I was introducing him that evening and I got his profile and I was like, all right, folks, so this person's from NPS, IIT, and I'm Bangalore, and like from the cream of the institutions everywhere, at every layer. And he was like, dude, you didn't have to do that, dude. And that's the only conversation I remember having with him. And that's probably why was that why you were attracted to him? Because he was very smart?
I just found his writing interesting. So it started off with me following his blog and not knowing who wrote the blog.
Right.
So it had nothing to do with schools he went to. Although I must confess that I did think that he was good marriage material because he went to those schools.
Right. Because I saw one of your videos where you said, "Bari bhi na, madhya madakagala." Right. Which was the point where you said that this is a defining moment. I can see myself spending the rest of my life with him.
I actually didn't think that. To be very honest, I didn't think that. Because, I mean, I was 22, right?
You met him when you were 22?
Yeah, I met him.
Oh, he's the person you went for a walk. Went for a walk with. Right. Okay.
Yeah. So I met him when I was 22. I was just out of college in my first job. I wasn't thinking about getting married or any such thing. And, I happened to meet this guy and he was actually looking to get married, as in he was meeting people in the arranged marriage market. And so he was clearly in that mindset. So it was he who proposed the idea first. And of course, by then my parents had already like booked the chatra. So we just thought we'll go with the...
Right.
So obviously from their perspective, they were like, oh, okay, if there's a guy who likes our daughter enough to like consider her for like marriage, and he seems like a decent boy. We know we have too many like connections with his family and so on. So like, why not? Same caste, same subcaste, and like all of that crazy shit that like parents
Right.
think about.
Right.
And so my parents were very convinced that this was a good idea, and I thought he was a decent guy, but obviously I wasn't thinking about marriage. I wasn't even thinking, oh my God, I want to spend the
You're
rest
a
of my
very
life with
pricey woman, I tell you that.
I wouldn't say that.
Because you're saying, all along, you're saying this guy wants to get married to you, and you're saying, yeah, he's all right. So,
Also, I mean, I must give you some context because I had dated people before,
right.
and like, because I didn't have that feeling of what we call as like lust or love or like that, whatever,
Right.
where there was no sort of guiding sort of force from the universe saying, oh my God, like he said, like I thought he was a really nice guy, like, much better than a lot of jerks that I'd seen in my life, right? So I was like, that's nice. Like, he seems like my dad, like, like
Yeah.
nice, sweet sort of person. And that's it, right? And I don't think I was old enough, like most people that I meet nowadays as clients who have so many ideas about what they want from a partner. I had no idea what I wanted. Like, I don't even think I thought about it. Like, and I think maybe that's why it helped, because I had no expectations from it. And maybe that's why I do what I do, because I feel like I learned more about what you should expect from a relationship and how you need to think through about what kind of a partner would suit a good relationship, because I felt like I had to keep justifying why I got married so early and why I was married to this person, why I'm continuing to be married to this person, and so on throughout our life. And I felt like I wish I had that understanding before, because I feel like a lot of people don't have that understanding, and they have this, even at 30 or 35, they're like, oh, I want somebody from IIT, and I'll be like, why? I have one of those at home, and he's not doing what you think he's supposed to be doing. Like, have a normal job and like, just monthly salary and stuff like that. So yeah,
That's
TMI.
No, that's okay. Because I know what you mean when you say, because perceptions hold a lot of weightage in when it comes to marriages, right? When it comes to convincing your parents that a particular person's the right fit for you, convincing them. Perceptions are make or break there. And the two kinds of people that we see commonly today, at least I see commonly today, is the people who have a checklist and see, right, he's a good guy, or she's a good match for me. She checks all the boxes. This is going to be a stable relationship that we're going to have. It's sensible. Everything's right. Everything is just right. Then there's the exact opposite who say, no, I've got to wake up every morning feeling excited. This person needs to excite me. If I'm not challenged in this relationship, then it's not for me. So personally, what is your take on both these things? And is there a third type?
I think there are two different things, right? So I'll talk about them like separately. So first thing, when you spoke about checklists, there is nothing wrong about checklists, right? But what is wrong about checklists is how you make it. Oftentimes what people forget is what you want from a relationship should define who you should be with, and not the other way around. People make this assumption saying, if I have a guy who is this community, has gone to this college, he has this job, he is going to provide me with stability, security, emotional stability, blah blah blah. They make weird correlations when there isn't one. Like when there aren't any correlations, like people say, okay, if this person's gone to a great college, has a great job, that means he's also going to be like emotionally stable. Like why? They're not connected at all, right? If you are looking for a stable, like emotionally stable relationship, that's what you've got to go look for in a person.
Right.
So I think the way people make checklists is a little screwed up, but fundamentally, there's nothing wrong with having a checklist, right?
Okay.
How else will you remain focused about what you want
Correct.
from a
Correct.
relationship,
Yeah.
right? And that's one thing. It's totally okay to have checklists, and if someone doesn't want to have a checklist, that's fine too, right? Like, as long as you're okay to deal with ambiguity along the way, and like, so that sort of brings us to the other person where you're saying they've got to wake up and want to be in it every day, or like want to feel excited about it.
Yeah.
You have to remember, when you sign up for that, saying, hey, I want to wake up every day and make this decision every day, you want to know that every day is not going to be the same.
Right.
And every day is not going to move upward always.
Right.
That it is going to be downward, and it is going to go in different directions that you never expected, and you've got to be okay with it. If you signed up for a life saying, I'll go with the flow, right? It only becomes really silly when you say, you want to make this decision every day, but then, it has to be a great decision every day. Like, it has to be like a great sort of setting every day. I think that's very misplaced. Imagine living with anybody, right? Like even a flatmate, or like even your parents, like living with somebody for like 30 years, 40 years.
Yeah.
How can you expect every day to be similar?
You can't.
Like, that's just stupid. Like, and in terms of what else you can expect, there are a lot of, like, what are the type of people there? There are a lot of people who say, like, you know what, I know a little bit about this person, know enough to sort of take a gamble, spend the rest of my life discovering about them. Or like, I don't really care, it's not really a big part of my life, I just want to be with someone because I think I don't want to be lonely. And they just go with the flow. They take everything that comes their way, and they just deal with it, not as a problem but as a feature.
Right.
Like, and I feel like that was sort of like the hallmark of a lot of arranged marriages of the previous generation, where they got into it saying, I don't know much, it can go either way, but I'm going to discover along the way and figure it out.
Right.
And so it was much easier then rather than now, where people are like, oh, I think I know everything to be with this person and it's going to be a great life. And then suddenly something goes wrong and you're like, shit, it wasn't supposed to go this way. Like, what do I do now? Like, I'm freaking out.
Right.
Right.
In fact, I'd like to interrupt you a bit here. When you said earlier days, it was a lot simpler because people accepted that they didn't know everything. They wanted to get into it and they were okay with it going either way, and they were okay and they were willing to fix it. I think that's also because there was a whole family construct behind it. There were two families involved, and I know it's an old thought process to say that there are families involved, but it actually was a defining factor. You would be willing to resolve disputes because there's a lot more at stake. Now it's all individual, right? You feel like you know everything, you have the power to decide everything. Every decision can be taken in a flash, in a jiffy. So you're not that willing to make compromises and fix things anymore. And things are a lot more volatile, don't you think? Or am I far away from the ballpark?
Yeah, no, I mean, that is true. I think there are good and bad things about having that family construct, right? Like when you have little failures, you say, okay, you know what, there's a lot more at stake and I've got to make this work, and then you try harder. But at the same time, having that family construct would really prevent you from breaking free when you really needed to, right? There are a lot of people whose marriages were just really fucked up, like, but they were just staying together because, they thought they had to, because, their families' reputations were at stake and so on. So that's when it was sort of counterproductive to have a family construct, right? It wasn't very empowering. Today, people are a bit more empowered. But having said that, I think we have a lot lesser patience today because we're a lot more individualistic than we used to be. So I wouldn't say one is better than the other. I'm just saying, I hope we progress to something that's sort of like the middle ground, or who knows, maybe completely break free from either of these, right? But I'm just saying, neither was awesome or like anything, but I think somewhere in the middle would have been a little bit better, I think.
Right. I'm going to take another sharp right turn here into a different segment. Right. I say that um, communication is such a desired skill, effective communication, so desired that it's now the number one skill required by all companies that are recruiting. And it doesn't stop at that. It even goes into your homes where you need to clear misunderstandings and clear the air a lot of times, even when you don't like to. Conflict resolution is a part of a healthy family. But
Oh, for sure.
there are individuals that say, no, you know what, my partner's got to respect me for who I am, and this is who I am. I'm not great at communicating. You should understand what I mean it when I think about it.
Right.
Right. So what do you have to
Yeah.
say to such scenarios where people are just not willing to change for the better?
Yeah, no, I think communication is just the most basic foundation of any relationship, right? It doesn't matter if two people have the most contrasting personalities, but if they're able to talk to each other,
Mm-hmm.
you're able to save that relationship, right? You're able to sort of have a healthy sort of conversation dialogue that allows you to nurture that relationship. Now, you mentioned the word conflict resolution, right? I think one of the things that is, let's say, underplayed a little bit is understanding each other's conflict resolution style before getting together with somebody, right?
Right. Right.
Me personally, um, this aspect of it was super important because of my own previous experiences where I am someone who likes to resolve conflicts. I am someone who likes to talk things out.
Mm-hmm.
I
Mm-hmm.
I want I want resolution. I
Right.
want some sort of closure, and it makes me unsettled, insecure when I don't get that closure. So for me, it was really important that I had someone who was willing to talk.
Right.
Now, in terms of conflict resolution styles, there are a few different styles among partners, especially in relationships, right? There are people who just completely shut off. They don't want to talk. They just
Yeah.
want to go away, walk away.
They call it
And then
needing their
there's
space. Yeah. You know.
yeah, exactly. And then there is another type of person who will just keep screaming and shouting because they want it to end. They want to just resolve it and move on, right? And there are some people who want to walk away for 5 minutes, but then they want to come back and talk when everybody's calmer. They don't want to
Mm-hmm.
shout or engage in that shouting,
Yeah.
but they want their space only for a little bit of time. They don't want to run away forever. So
Mm-hmm.
it's so important for you to understand how the other person operates, right?
Right.
Even before you get into a relationship, because that is what causes people to either to stay together or not. Because how are you going to go on in life
Yeah.
or spend the rest of your life with somebody when they won't make you feel good by closing a discussion or closing an argument, right?
Yeah.
So I would say it's okay if somebody shuts off. It's okay if somebody doesn't want to talk and you're someone who likes resolution. But find out if they have any inclination to resolve
Okay.
in
Right.
life, right?
Right.
If they have an inclination to resolve, if they want to come back to you after 3 days and talk about it, that's still fine. Because
Right.
different people operate differently. But then they need to have that willingness to make things work. They have to
Right.
have the willingness to communicate. If you don't communicate and if you're not upfront with each other about your styles and build space for those styles, then it's very difficult, right? And how do you even build space for the styles? By talking to each other and telling each other what your preferences are and finding out if the other person's okay or not. If they're not okay, what's the middle ground? How do you resolve things, right? So communication is just everything in a relationship.
You bring out an interesting point there because you say that you need to understand each other's styles. Now, understanding is oftentimes
Yeah.
ignored or left out of the communication bracket. Understanding is a major part of communication. Just because you can
Yeah.
talk well, you can articulate your thoughts well and convince people, persuade people, doesn't mean you're an effective communicator. You may be a good speaker, but you're not an effective communicator because it's not unilateral. It's got to be both ways. You got to also understand what the person's going through,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
some people refuse or live in denial when you see, when they're brought into the limelight, and when we say you're not a good communicator, you're just a good speaker, they find it hard to digest this fact because throughout their
Yeah.
lives they've been brought up being told that, hey, you're a great speaker, you can go up on stage and speak, you can present at your office meetings. And
Yeah.
then suddenly
Yeah.
when they're told this is toxic behavior, you're not a good communicator, they fail to digest this concept.
This has two effects on people, right? When you, like, when they're made aware that they're
Mm-hmm.
not communicating well, they're not a good communicator. One, they try to improve. Two, they
Okay.
shut off.
Mm-hmm. Right.
Shutting off is not helpful,
Mm-hmm.
right? And very few people have the inclination to improve, or the confidence that they can improve.
Right.
And so that prevents them from even trying.
Right.
Like, especially with a relationship, the older you get, you're so set in your style, you are afraid of trying new things. So if I
Mm-hmm.
suddenly tell you, hey, your communication sucks, like you're not communicating with me, for instance, right, they'll stop trying.
Yeah.
So it's always a good idea. I mean, you wouldn't agree with it being a communications coach. It's always a good idea to just focus on encouraging people to just be vocal at the very start.
Right.
Just talk. It doesn't make sense, it's okay, but just talk, right?
Yeah.
So I don't know like what your take on this is. What I've found is Americans and English people, they're really good at talking.
Yeah.
They may not make sense, but they're really good at talking. Like they're like they're super confident, they're not
I get
afraid to
what you
speak
mean.
up. They've it's because I think from a very young age, they're encouraged to talk. They're encouraged to voice their thoughts.
Yeah.
And we, from a very young age, are encouraged to shut up and
Yeah.
not talk.
In fact, I
Right?
have two Monday meetings every Monday. There's one team meeting with my team here in India, and one more with the US folks. And the Indian team meeting usually is quite entertaining because it's relatable. You're talking to folks you're very comfortable with. We make each other comfortable, and then it's a business talk, right? For the rest of the meeting. Now, the contrasting picture that the meeting I have with US folks gives me is that despite not knowing them well, despite them being a lot older to me and not being familiar with each other's traditions, cultures, they will make it a point to have small talk at the beginning of every conversation, every meeting. They will just talk
Right.
about how's the lockdown going there. They have,
Yeah.
for them, lockdowns are a very recent thing. For us, lockdown's been
Yeah.
happening for the last 2 months. They'll address that fact. They will
Yeah.
care
Yeah.
enough to ask. They won't just send
Yeah.
you mails saying PFA Excel sheet, PFA spreadsheet. They will say, hi, hope you're doing well. Hope your Monday morning is going
Yeah.
great. Here's the Excel sheet that you asked
Yeah.
for. Right? So
Yeah.
that these
Yeah.
small changes make you smile.
Yeah.
And it's an innate quality, like you said. Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. And yeah, so we should just, at least as Indians, I think we should just focus on talking to starters, because
Yeah.
especially men, I think they just don't know how to be vocal about how they're feeling. Uh,
Yeah.
they're very likely to shut off, or like people who are, let's say, afraid, like have grown up afraid of making mistakes, prefer to run away, prefer to be quiet, because
Right.
they're afraid of saying something that could damage something a lot more.
Correct. And there's a running joke that all parents, especially older dads, talk about. And all their WhatsApp forwards are also about the same thing. They said, no matter who's right in a marriage, the guy always says sorry. Now, it's become such a running joke that the conflict resolution process is not even taken seriously anymore.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
It's just
Yeah.
something you've learned to live with, like the virus. You've just learned to live with the fact that some things are going to be unsaid, and that's okay, unspoken, and that's okay.
Yeah, I mean that's how it is, right? Like we love to not talk about things that are uncomfortable. We'll at best joke about it,
Yeah.
uh, and that's how truth is dispersed. But yeah, we don't talk about it, and that's what I think makes it much harder for the future generations because they don't know what to expect from marriages, and they just see
Right.
their parents like still being together, and they're like, oh, how are these two with each other? There must be something right with them, but there's something
Mm,
so fucked up about us that I can't be with the same person
mm,
for like over 2 years or something like that, right?
right.
So
Right.
talking is important. Even if you don't make sense in the beginning, talking is important.
I think thanks for that validation. You just confirmed my views and beliefs, and I didn't have a embarrassing disagreement with you. I think the last segment of this interview, to conclude it all, I have improvised a rapid fire round for you.
Ooh,
Answer
okay. This is
this in
like
the
coffee with Kolle.
yes. In fact,
Okay.
in my engineering days, we had such an event with some of the folks at college, and I was the host, and we named it Coffee with Kolle. We didn't have budget for what do you say, coffee, so we had toffee, and toffee
Oh,
like
okay.
peppermint, you know, in a bowl in front of all of
Right,
us.
right.
Anyway,
Fair enough.
so
Yeah.
these are all questions that either we've spoken about or we will touch upon in the future. Right. Number one, your personal preferences: arranged marriage or love marriage?
Oh, love.
Love marriage. Okay. Should the guy
Yeah.
pay on a date, or should you split the bill, or should the girl pay?
You should split the bill.
Always.
Oh, yeah, for sure. Yeah, I don't want the other guy's Rona or like the other way around.
Okay. Three of your best tips for conflict resolution.
Talk, just talk. Like whenever you're ready, talk. If you're not great at talking, send an email. But always make sure that you get your point across and you have heard the other person's point of view.
Right.
That's it.
Okay. Up next, how do you know the person's right or wrong for you? What's that defining feeling?
You'll never get it.
You'll never get it.
Yeah, you'll never get it. You
Okay,
just
so
you just have to take a
just
risk. It's
so
a
just
it's a
stop
it's a
looking for it.
gamble. It's yeah, stop looking for it. It's a gamble.
Okay. And for
Because when
younger
you're
people,
looking for it, you'll never find it.
all right, that makes sense. I'm gonna write that down after this. My last two questions are going to be your personalized messages. Number one,
Okay.
your personalized message for parents who are looking to get their kids married.
Shit, too much pressure. Get off their back, really. Just get off their back. They're adults and they can do this on their own. If they need your support, they'll come to you.
And lastly, for folks looking to find their life partner, this is your brand plug-in opportunity. Okay, for folks looking to find their soulmate, be it looking to get married or just go on a nice date with someone. What's your take on that? What's your message?
Yeah, stop trying to blame everything on your parents. You're not single because of your parents. If you want to go find someone to be with, do it. I mean, there's nothing stopping you now. You're a grown adult who can go find someone on your own. And don't be shy.
Yes, that's very important. Please don't be shy. If you're meeting somebody at a common place or a social gathering, don't hesitate from going and talking to them, because there's something I call the 20-second rule that I talk about at all my public speaking events. It's that
Oh, okay. What is that?
the first 20 seconds, every nerve and sinew in your body will tell you, yes, you can do it. Yes, Rahul, you can do it. Yes, Priyanka, you can do it. And after the 20-second mark, every single one of those nerves and sinews that earlier told you can now tell you that you can't. So it's okay to be impulsive sometimes. If you want to ask a question, if you want to go talk to someone, if you want to go up on stage, capture an opportunity, first 20 seconds, your best friends. So do it.
Awesome. Yeah, I think that's great advice.
Yeah. And I think with that,
Cool. This was fun.
we're at the conclusion of our first ever interview slash podcast. It was a real pleasure talking to you, Priyanka. I got to learn so much.
Yeah, absolutely. Likewise. I can't believe like it wasn't scripted at all. And it was just, we went with the flow, and this is only the second time that we're talking, right?
Oh yeah, that's like a caveat for everyone to see. This wasn't scripted. So in case you want us to cover more aspects, have questions, please write in to Priyanka. Priyanka, you could tell them your social media handles where people can reach out to you.
Yeah. Oh shit. Now I'm going to remember it. Oh, it's at Marriage Auntie on Twitter and Marriage Broker Auntie on Instagram.
And if you have any questions related to communication or you want to get rid of the fear of public speaking, you can reach out to me on @RAHULKOLLE, Rahul Kolle. And that's the same for Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, or anything else out there. All
Awesome.
right. This has been great. Thank you so much.
Yeah. Thank you. It was lovely.